Today we will begin the discussion on human reproduction. So this is the chapter, that is chapter number 3 of your class 12th NCERT textbook, biology textbook for NEET entrance examination. And the specific topic of this chapter that we are going to discuss in this video is 3.1, the male reproductive system. First, a very important question to begin with. This is an important chapter for your NEET entrance exam. It's an important chapter, which means that you can get anything 4 or 5 questions, anywhere between 4 or 5 questions come from human reproductive system. That makes it a chapter that is very well represented in the NEET entrance exam. Now, as to the nature of the questions, what type of questions are asked in this particular chapter, there can be from very simple questions to highly conceptual questions. And when we look at the female reproductive physiology, incidentally, I would dare say that this chapter actually has the easiest and the most difficult part for NEET aspirant. The easiest would be the male reproductive physiology and the most difficult would be the female reproductive physiology. So we have an entire spectrum open to us, and therefore, considering that 4 to 5 questions, some of the questions can be highly conceptual. Please pay attention. The second thing that I want to tell you is that this is one of the big favorite topics of the student. Now, the problem with favorite topics is that I have frequently seen students going into unnecessary depths. So they go at length. They try to do, I would say, a PhD in this topic. So this is one topic, digestive system is another, animal kingdom is another topic. And now please keep the things in perspective. This is your final stretch of preparation for your NEET entrance exam. You are in the final lap. And this is a quick revision of the most important questions, and actually it's a quick comprehensive revision of all the concepts and highlighting the questions that are very important and are likely to appear in the NEET. We both know that almost all questions will be based or come directly from NCERT. So this is where we must be wary of. Please try to remember that this is a problem very frequently committed by many students, and this would be an unnecessary wastage of time. So what I have done is that I will try to keep myself to the NCERT textbook. I will not wander a lot out of NCERT textbook because this is where the questions are going to come. But obviously, to understand NCERT properly, we will also add some concepts that are not from NCERT, but our endeavor would be that understanding these extensions of NCERT make us comprehend the things that are given in NCERT in a better manner. It must clarify the basic concepts given in the NCERT. Ultimately, this is what is required. So I am starting the male reproductive system. As I told you that I will deliberately try to limit myself majorly to the NCERT. So what I have done is that I have this slide for you. Now I would advise you to keep your NCERT textbook with you. This is the paragraph of your NCERT, and you can see that some of the words in the introductory paragraph are highlighted here. And what I will tell you is that what exactly each word means. This is how we will go about in this chapter. Now, when we say that human beings are sexually reproducing, so what are the questions that can be framed on this very line? So what can be the question that can be framed that human beings are sexually reproducing? Please understand this, that human beings are sexually reproducing, and sexual reproduction has a big advantage over asexual reproduction. This is an important question that was important in chapter 1 as well, the reproduction in organism. We have discussed this chapter with you. I hope you know the answer. The variations that are generated in the sexual reproduction are immense, and therefore the population will will have a huge amount of genetic variability, and even in adverse conditions some of them may be naturally selected, and therefore it paves way for the evolution of the species. That is a very, very important advantage of sexual reproduction. The second word NCERT says is that there it is vivipary. So they are viviparous, and viviparity is the development of the embryo and the fetus within the body of the female parent. So in human beings, you know that the human embryos, the fetus, they develop inside the womb of the mother, inside the body of the mother. What is the advantage of viviparity? So viviparity protects the developing embryo or the fetus from the environmental conditions and all, as well as from the dangers of predation. So this is a very important point to understand right at the beginning, that what would be the advantage of viviparity. So I hope these two questions are absolutely clear. Then your NCERT talks about there are certain events in this sexual reproduction in human beings. Now before going on to this, let me tell you that human beings have a clear-cut sexual dimorphism. After the onset of puberty, puberty is the period where the secondary sexual characters start or begin to develop, and then the human female and human males are distinct morphologies. They can be easily distinguished based on the secondary sexual character. This would be what I am saying is sexual dimorphism. And it is very, very important to remember one thing at the beginning itself, that in human beings the sex of the fetus is actually determined by the father, the type of the sperm that is fertilizing the egg. And we will discuss this in detail later on in this video, but just to remember this, and please remember that both human male and human female have 44 autosomes. These are 22 pairs, but they differ in the pair of sex chromosome. The female is homogametic, which means that because she is having two X chromosome with respect to the sex chromosome, all the gametes she is ever going to produce will contain only X chromosomes, while the male is heterogametic because the genotype of the sex chromosome would be XY, and 50% of the sperms will be carrying X chromosome and 50% of the sperms will be carrying Y chromosome. A natural corollary will be that the sex of the baby will be decided by the type of the sperm that is fertilizing the ovum. So it will be male if it is being fertilized by Y chromosome, and it will be female if it is being fertilized by the X chromosome. One more important point is that in human beings, Y chromosome is the male determining factor. So this we will see in genetics as well, but it is prudent that we just have a recollection of the basic facts. So that means the Y chromosome is the male determining factor in human beings. That means if you look at the genotype of an organism, irrespective of the number of the X chromosome present in the genotype, if there is a Y chromosome present, then it has to be genetically male. And because you have read genetics, you know about Klinefelter syndrome. So this Klinefelter syndrome, person suffering from Klinefelter syndrome, in spite of having two X chromosome, is actually a genetic male because of the presence of Y chromosome. Very simply put, if the genotype has a Y chromosome, it is genetically male, and if it doesn't have Y chromosome, then it is genetically female. Now, one more important thing to understand is that this Y chromosome has a very important gene. This gene is called as SRY gene, and the product of SRY gene is called as TDF. This is called as testis determining factor. We will later on see what significance does it carry. I hope this is what outside the NCERT that I have told you, this much you should remember. Now, the basic events in the sexual reproduction, as I told you that these are the highlighted words in the first paragraph of your NCERT, would be obviously that there must be gametogenesis. So there should be a formation of gametes. This would be first event in sexual reproduction. Obviously, these gametes have to be haploid. They will have only one set of chromosome, and fertilization of the gametes restores the normal diploid condition. So there must be some cells in the male and females which will be diploid, and these cells will undergo meiosis, and because of this meiotic division, it will lead to the formation of gametes, and gametes can be having genetic variations because of the process of crossing over, independent assortment. All these things will come into play. They will generate the variations that are seen in the gametes. So first thing is about gametogenesis. Then obviously the gamete has to be transferred, the male gamete has to be deposited in the female genital tract. So this process would be called as insemination. So insemination would be deposition of the male gamete into the female genital tract. We are saying that this is insemination. Now please understand the basic. Through the sexual activity, this would be a natural process of insemination, and in the cases of infertility, we can resort to the assisted reproductive technology that may involve artificial insemination as well. So I hope insemination can be natural and artificial. This thing is now absolutely clear. So we will use artificial insemination in treatment in assisted reproductive technologies for treatment for infertility. Now the third thing would be obviously, if it is deposited, the two male gametes are present at the same time in the female genital tract, then what is going to happen? They are going to fuse, and this thing would be called as fertilization. So the next thing would be fertilization. It is the most critical process in sexual reproduction. This is a very, very critical process in sexual reproduction. Remember chapter 1, where it has specifically, or NCERT has specifically mentioned that it is the most critical process in sexual reproduction. So we are saying that this is fertilization. You must have heard of a word which is called as syngamy, and this fertilization of two haploid gametes will restore the diploid condition and will result in the formation of a single cell which is called as the zygote. So human body may have 50 trillion plus cells, but all these cells are derived from this single cell. We all have begun our life as a single cell, and this single cell is called as zygote. So if the zygote is formed, then there must be the development of the zygote. Zygote will divide, will form a multicellular structure which is called as the embryo, and as soon as you start seeing the formation of the organs, now this embryo will be called as the fetus. So please understand these words. So that means a zygote divides to form a multicellular structure. We are calling it as an embryo, and then I am saying that in the embryo, if you see the formation of the organs, they have begun, then it is not called as embryo any further. Now it would be called as a fetus. I hope these two terms are absolutely clear. And at a certain level of development of the embryo, there is a structure which is called as blastocyst. We will see it later on, that gets implanted on the wall of the uterus of the female. So you know that as I told you, that the development occurs inside the body of the female, and there is an organ which is called as uterus. The wall of the uterus provides the surface for the attachment of this developing embryo. You know the development of the placenta and how the things work, but this process would be called as implantation. And it is a very important question. We will be repeating it again, but because we have done this chapter, let us be clear that implantation in human beings occur at the stage of blastocyst. It occurs 7th, 8th day post fertilization, and it establishes pregnancy. So that means the pregnancy is not established merely by fertilization. It may so happen that many of these fertilization, so fertilization can also be called as conception. So you must have read these words, may also be called as conception. It is not necessary that this thing will get established, and the establishment of the blastocyst or the implantation of the blastocyst on the uterine wall actually establishes pregnancy. So now the pregnancy is established. Obviously there would be embryonic development within the female body, within the uterus. This period would be called as the gestation period. And look at this, the thing is that after implantation there would be embryonic development, the fetal development, and the entire period would be called as gestation period. You know that this is roughly 9 months in human beings, and these 9 months are divided into periods of 3 months each, respectively called as the first, second and third trimester. Initially you will call this developing structure as an embryo, but later on you will be calling it as a fetus. And then when this embryonic development is now there will be a question, how do you calculate the gestation age? And this is where I am saying that the students actually go to unnecessary depth. That is not our consideration right now, but just to give you an idea that sometimes the gestation age can be calculated from the age or from the day of the fertilization, and it is always easier to calculate it from the last menstrual period. So last menstrual period is what you are more sure of, because fertilization occurs around 2 weeks 14 days prior to the onset of the next cycle. So you calculate it from the last menstrual period or from the fertilization that you will have to deduce from the last menstrual period, that okay, the next menstrual period was expected on this day, and before that the 14th day would be the day of fertilization. This is roughly just to give you an idea how do you calculate the gestation age. And once this thing is complete, and then there is the birth process which is called as parturition. So I hope these things are absolutely clear. And now let us move on to the real part that we actually wanted to discuss. This would be 3.1, the male reproductive system. So again you can see that I have a slide prepared for you, and what is happening here. And again let us look at this, and we are saying the male reproductive system is located in the pelvis. So right now my thinking is that we should be absolutely sure about the terms that are given in the NCERT textbook. Now let us look at here, look at this diagram. So this is the human body. Let us say that this part of the cavity is the thoracic cavity. So you know the lungs are situated here, the heart is situated here. This part of the body cavity would be called as thorax. And then you know that there would be abdominal cavity. So let us make the abdominal a large one, the abdominal cavity. And then we say that in the lowermost part of the abdominal cavity there would be the pelvic cavity, and that would be surrounded by the bones that constitute the pelvis of the human beings. So this would be something like this. This part of the lower abdominal cavity is called as the pelvic cavity. And this is where NCERT is saying that the sex organs are present. Obviously it will also have urinary bladder and other structures, but the reproductive structures are present in the lower part of the abdominal cavity, which is actually called as the pelvic cavity. Now going back to NCERT, so we know what exactly is a pelvis region, and it includes a pair of testes with accessory ducts. So look at the word that I have highlighted. I have said that this word needs to be understood, that what exactly is an accessory thing. That means if something is accessory, there must be something which is primary as well. So what is a primary sex organ? This would be an important question, that what exactly is a primary sex organ. So a primary sex organ by definition is one. For a particular sex, a primary sex organ will be the one that produces two things. One, the gamete of that sex. So it produces the gamete for that particular sex, and it also produces the hormone. It also produces the hormone that regulates the development of the secondary sexual character. So considering this, the testis, so singular will be testis, plural would be testes, tes. So look at the spelling, both are pronounced testes and testes respectively. And what I am saying is that this is the primary sex organ in the human males. The reason is that it produces the gamete, which is obviously everybody knows that this is the sperm, and it produces the hormone. The hormones, the male sex hormones, are collectively called as androgens. Mind the word, I am saying that the male sex hormones are collectively called as androgens. Do you know that adrenal cortex is present in both human male and human female, and they also produce some androgens, say for example DHEA, dehydroepiandrosterone, and they will be produced in both sexes, and the main androgen is actually testosterone. And as you look at the word sterone, you know that it must be having a sterol nucleus. You are talking of a lipid, and you are talking of a sterol, and the sterol that I am talking about, which actually is the precursor of testosterone or male sex hormone or androgens, would be cholesterol. So these all things now are absolutely ready. We know that anything other than the testes associated with human reproduction, human male reproduction, should be called as the accessory one. So that would not be primary. Primary is testis. Everything else that we discuss with respect to the human reproduction would be secondary organs or secondary ducts or accessory ducts or accessory glands, and everything this would be accessory. The primary thing is testis. I hope this line is absolutely clear. Then your NCERT says that the testes are situated outside the abdominal cavity. This is the scrotum. So now let us look at this thing closely. This is a very easy question, very much very favorite question of students. We know that this is the pelvis, and this is where the testes actually initially develop, and during the fetal life the testes descend, and they descend and come out to a cutaneous and fibromuscular sac, which is called as the scrotum, and the testes descend outside the body, and they are present in the scrotum. As I told you that this scrotum is a fibromuscular and a cutaneous sac. So that means it is basically a pouch of the skin, and there would be fibrous tissue as well as some muscles which will be present in this. Now why does this happen? And you know, just a small extension of NCERT, the path that is taken by the testes during its descent is called as the inguinal canal. So let me write this word. This is called as inguinal canal. Now this descent is completed by the 7th month of gestation. By the end of the 7th month of the gestation, normally the descent of the testis is complete. And this is where your NCERT is saying that this descent is important because effective spermatogenesis requires a body temperature that is less than body temperature. How much less? This would be the question. 2 to 2.5 degree Celsius less than the body temperature. Now the question that can be based on an extension of this information is that what is so special about scrotum that thermoregulation is easy? Now the answer is one, that it is highly rugose. Folded skin is present. It has a large surface area, and you know that heat can be lost from a large surface area. Second, it has a large number of sweat glands. So we know that evaporation causes cooling, and more importantly, there is a muscle. There is a muscle that actually is attached to the testes like this, and when the ambient temperature is cold, this muscle actually contracts and pulls the testes towards the body, and therefore preserves the heat. When the ambient temperature is high, this is relaxed and the testes dangle away from the body. So all these things, all these adaptations help to achieve a temperature that is very important for effective spermatogenesis. And another extension would be that if the testes fail to descend, what is going to happen? So we know that testes are involved in the production of the male gametes, and male gametes are responsible for fertility. And if fertility is adversely affected, then it may lead to infertility or sterility. That would be the problem. So sterility would be inability to produce the gamete, and this can be a consequence of the failure of the testes to descend, and this thing is called as cryptorchidism. So this thing is called as cryptorchidism. I hope now this thing is absolutely clear. And just going back to NCERT again, we now understand why this is happening. We now know that what is the role of scrotum in effective spermatogenesis. Moving on, let us look. There are some dimensions that are given about the testes. So they are giving you some dimensions of the testes. Just remember, it's a factual question. So it is an oval type of structure with more length than the width. The length would be around 4 to 5 centimeter and the width is about 2 to 3 centimeter. And they are covered by a dense covering, and each testis has 250 compartments called as testicular lobules, about 250 compartments. So let us look at this line more closely. Now let us look at this line more closely. We are saying that testis is an oval type of structure, and it has more length, which is 4 to 5 centimeter, than width, which is only 2 to 3 centimeter, and the testis is covered by a tough connective tissue, and this tough connective tissue would be called as the tunica albuginea. And what we will see is that this tunica albuginea will send partitions. Now that means it will thankfully I was able to save this, and look at this. What I'm saying is that the outermost covering, just to give you an idea, just I am not making a very elaborate diagram, just giving you an idea. What I'm saying is that this tunica albuginea, it sends the partition into the substance of the testis. So this is something like this, and this is what are called as the testicular lobules. And now remember this covering of fibrous tissue, this is tunica albuginea. And just to give you an unnecessary information, that tunica albuginea keeps the testicular substance under pressure, and apart from a lower temperature, lower than body temperature, a pressure is also a physical parameter that is required for effective spermatogenesis, and that function is actually provided by tunica albuginea. And you can look at the septa, and then you are seeing that it is divided into large number of lobules, and as your NCERT rightly says, that these number of lobules is approximately 250 in each testis. So I hope this is absolutely clear. Now this getting this line correct, now let us move further. Now the textbook says that each lobule contains 1, 2, 3. Then it is talking of, look at the highlighted words, the seminiferous tubules, the spermatogonia, the Sertoli cells, the Leydig cells. So this is the paragraph that I am now going to discuss with you, that what are the questions that are likely to be asked here. So what we are saying is that in each lobule there may be 1 to 3 very coiled small diameter tubes, and obviously they would be called as tubules. So let us take a different color just to differentiate this thing. We will say that it is very coiled, and it is something like this. So they can be 1 to 3. Obviously they will be very intertwined with each other. So this is highly coiled structure, and this thing is called as a seminiferous tubule. So we are saying around 250 of the lobules, in each lobule 1 to 3 seminiferous tubules. We are saying that this is a small diameter tube, and hence is called as the seminiferous tubule. Now what happens in this seminiferous tubule is that, let me make a big diagram showing this particular part of the seminiferous tubule. You can appreciate that this will be the wall of the seminiferous tubule. It is lined by 2 types of cells, and one of the cell is called as the spermatogonia, the germ cells. So that means you will see the large number of spermatogonia, the male germ cells that are lining the seminiferous tubule. We will call these cells as spermatogonia. Now this is very easy. Let me make this diagram on a separate page, and let us say that this is what is seminiferous tubules wall, and it is lined by one type of cells that are present in its lining are called as the spermatogonia. So I have left some spaces, as you can see, that this provides space for another type of cell present in the lining of the seminiferous tubule, and we will call these tall elongated cells as the Sertoli cells, the sustentacular cells, or the nurse cells, or the mother cells. So these cells, they are called as Sertoli cells. They are also called as nurse cells, sometimes mother cells, sometimes sustentacular cells. So I hope this thing is absolutely clear. They will help in the maturation of the formation of the sperm, the last part of the spermatogenesis, you must be aware, which is called as spermiogenesis. So two types of cell present in the lining of the seminiferous tubule. One is the male germinal line cells, which are called as a spermatogonia. Now these spermatogonia are of two types. So we will say that one is type A, the other is type B, but let us talk of type A. They keep on dividing and they keep on replenishing the amount of spermatogonia present in the seminiferous tubule. Millions of sperms are formed per day in the human males, and some of them divide and actually develop into type B spermatogonia, and division of the type B spermatogonia will produce the primary spermatocyte, the cell in the sperm lineage in the human beings. So there are two types of spermatogonia, and these elongated cells that I am talking about, these are called as the Sertoli cells or the sustentacular cells. They will help in the formation of the sperm. The later part, again I am telling you, which is called as spermiogenesis. They will be taking part in the formation of a blood testis barrier. Again, an unnecessary information, but just to tell you the importance of Sertoli cells, please try to remember the main thing, that they will be helping in spermiogenesis, and they will be under the control of a hormone, which is follicle stimulating hormone, FSH. So these two things, please try to remember them. Now coming back to the previous diagram. So this is the testicular lobule, and you are looking at the seminiferous tubule, and outside the seminiferous tubule, within the lobules, is the space which is called as the interstitial space. And here in these interstitial spaces, you will see the presence of some very special cells. This is where I am making these cells. These cells, they are called as the interstitial cells of Leydig. So we are calling them Leydig cells, and when stimulated by the appropriate gonadotropin, important question, this gonadotropin is LH, they secrete the androgens, and the main androgen is testosterone. So please remember this, the sperm will be formed inside the seminiferous tubule, and the androgens will be produced by these interstitial cells, which are called as the Leydig cells. Both of them will be regulated by the gonadotropins. Immediately you can see that this is a primary sex organ. It is performing both functions of the male reproduction, which is the formation of the gamete as well as the production of the hormone that regulates the development of the secondary sexual characters. So hence testes will qualify for being a primary sex organ in the human males. I hope this thing is absolutely clear. Now going back to NCERT. So now we know that what are these. So now we know that what are seminiferous tubules, we know what are spermatogonia, we know what are Sertoli cells, we know what are Leydig cells, and Leydig cells synthesize and secrete testicular hormones. Look at this, called androgens, and then it says that other immunological competent cells are also present. So just to tell you something very interesting, we are saying that in testes, apart from this, there are some immunologically competent cells that are present along with all these cells. So these are the immunologically competent cells, and the immunological competent cells that we are talking about with respect to human testes would be number 1 macrophages, and number 2 would be the T lymphocytes. So you know from your chapter on human health and disease that why I am calling them as an immunocompetent cell. Now let me tell you something extra again just to keep the interest of yours. Probably it is not going to be asked in the NEET entrance exam, but because you are going to medical college, let me give you an astonishing fact. The thing is that testis is immune with respect to immunity. It's a privileged site. It's a privileged site. What does it mean? It means that if these sperms are somehow transported from the testes to some other part of the body, then they will elicit immune response from your own body. So they are capable of inducing autoimmune response. Now the reason for this is that the effective spermatogenesis actually begins at the onset of puberty. Now by the time the puberty occurs, the immune tolerance has developed. You must have read the human health and disease that your body has the ability to distinguish between self and non-self, but that ability is acquired very early in life. And because the spermatogenesis, though happening in your body, in the human male body, but they are occurring after a certain number of years, where the immune tolerance has already developed, then the body of this person actually may trigger an autoimmune response against this. And therefore, there are blood testis barrier. There are so many mechanisms that you will understand in your first year MBBS that why it is an privileged site with respect to immunity. We are talking of some questions like this just to give you a few food for thought. Why the sperms which are deposited in the female genital tract not rejected by the female body? Why the fetus that is implanted on the wall of the uterus, it is actually a foreign body for the female body? Why is it not rejected? These all questions we will be studying in higher classes. So I hope this line is now qualified that what is meant by the immunocompetent cells. So we are stopping here in this video. When I come back, we will complete this 3.1. We will look at the accessory duct system and we will be following NCERT. Hope you are enjoying this video.